Am I the a-hole for divorcing my husband and leave him with a kid after finding out I'm not biologically the mom? I can't believe my life has come to this. All I ever do is go out of my way to help others, but on the few occasions I need help, nobody ever comes through for me. I, 36 female, have been with my husband, 35 male, for a total of almost 10 years, married for 7. We had what I thought was my child by surrogate over 2 years ago, because after 4 years of trying to conceive with no success despite medical interventions, it turns out I am unable to carry a child to term. I had always wanted to be a mom. Devastated is an understatement regarding how I felt when I found out I have a medical condition that would make it nearly impossible to carry a baby to term. It was even more upsetting when I had to get a major surgery to remove uterine growths with the hope to increase fertility. And complications during surgery warranted a partial hysterectomy involving removal of my uterus only. I still had my ovaries, so I started looking into cost of a surrogate. It is really expensive. My close friend since college, who'd already had 2 kids of her own, offered to serve as the surrogate for us to cut down on costs. After 2 disappointing IVF sessions that did not result in pregnancy, she became pregnant on the 3rd try and carried a boy to term for us. I was so happy and busy after the birth, between being a mom and returning to work after a 4-week parental leave, so I didn't notice any warning signs. I should have noticed the red flags and warning signs early on, but I did not because I was so exhausted from working so much at my stressful job and 2 part-time jobs to cover most of the bills, and anticipated medical and legal costs associated with his friend becoming our surrogate. I was the primary breadwinner. My friend and my husband started talking more, and I would sometimes come home from my weekend job to find her already hanging out at our house when my husband was there. I chalked it up as innocuous, and it's good for her to know my husband better, since she was in the process of hopefully carrying our child for us. I was grateful to have someone helping us have a child. I also thought it weird that our son has brown eyes when both of us have blue. Then I found out that while this isn't common, it's possible sometimes due to many genes controlling eye color. Recently, it all came to a head when I took our son to a doctor's appointment and they did metabolic panel and blood tests, which showed that he had a blood type that is not biologically possible to have with me as his mother. He's B positive, I'm A positive, husband is O positive. Immediately, I started worrying it was the fertility clinic's fault and that they messed up and implanted a wrong embryo. I started lining up lawyer consultations to possibly sue the clinic and looked into having a DNA parentage test done. The test results showed that I am not the mother, but my husband still is the father. I was heartbroken and angrier than ever. Talked to lawyers about medical malpractice at the fertility clinic we'd used. Then my husband confessed that he'd slept with my friend, our surrogate, on a few different occasions during our struggle to have her get pregnant with our embryos. This means what I thought was our son conceived by IVF and carried with a surrogate isn't my son at all, and was in fact conceived the old-fashioned way, which I can't ever do. Livid and absolutely broken at the same time doesn't even begin to describe how I feel. I have been breaking down into crying spells over and over again about this. He claims he didn't ever think pregnancy could result because he pulled out, and he had always assumed that he was the reason for our earlier struggles to conceive, both before my hysterectomy and during IVF insemination process with his friend. I felt an immediate triple betrayal, from what was supposed to be my husband, my friend, and now knowing my child isn't even really mine. I had such white-hot rage and delirium, I immediately left home and stayed at a hotel for almost a week, before asking my parents to let me stay at home for a while. I admit I left our son with him. I am now filing divorce because he cheated and betrayed me in the worst possible way. I've also cut off my friendship with my friend, the surrogate, and feel afraid to trust anyone else now. I have seen a divorce lawyer to see about giving up my legal rights to this kid, so I don't have to face such betrayal or owe child support. My husband and friend/surrogate admit they were wrong and keep apologizing, but also called me immature and heartless to just give up on my son like that. My parents also say I can't just give up on a kid that I went through so many legal and medical hoops to have. When I told them I refused to stay in a cheater marriage and I'd rather adopt someday with a better, more trustworthy partner, they also told me I was wrong, and that maintaining my parental rights isn't much different than if I adopted outright. They said it isn't blood that makes a family. They're all about me divorcing my cheater husband, but keep telling me I'm making a mistake giving up my parental rights. Some of my other friends agree with what I'm doing. If you admitted they weren't big enough to swallow pride and care for an affair baby, or to see daily reminders of my friend/surrogate's betrayal every time I look at her son. I just want a clean break and a fresh start. I'm also looking at relocating several states away. Am I the a-hole to give up my parental rights in a divorce because a kid I paid a lot of money to have born by surrogacy isn't biologically mine at all but the surrogates? Now for the top comments. No, you're not the a-hole. You've suffered a terrible betrayal. Only you can say what's best for you. Personally, I wouldn't be able to look at the child without being hit with the betrayal again and again. Your parents and friends don't have to actually deal with the situation. They don't get a vote. Your soon-to-be ex is a real piece of work. You're immature? I would want to throw up if I was in the same room with him. Please get some therapy to work through this. Don't let these two a-holes hold you back from living your best life. It feels like biological maternity shouldn't matter that much, when it means I am finally fulfilling my dream of becoming a mother. He says that if I adopt someday, I am still going to have to raise a child that is not biologically mine. He has reminded me about what a depressive wreck I was during the infertility, the aftermath of my partial hysterectomy, and how I put him through the ringer because I was obsessed with wanting to have a child. He claims that I pushed him away with my baby obsession and he couldn't deal with me anymore, and that's why he started spraying the way he did. He also says that I can't just turn my back on a child when I legally signed all the paperwork, which is similar to adoption paperwork since the state doesn't readily recognize a child born to a surrogate to be the couple's child, since they base it on the person who gave birth to the child as being the legal mother, until paperwork is signed that transfers the rights over. He also claimed that I am going to have a difficult battle ahead of me trying to reverse that. Not a-hole. One of the things that gets me is that you were working extra jobs to pay for the surrogacy, which I am assuming included her medical bills and financially supporting her. I would speak to a solicitor about suing her for your money back. She knew that if she was having sex, then there was always a chance that the child was biologically hers. Oh, this. She likely signed a lot of legal forms about this stuff, including one about sleeping with anyone while undergoing fertility treatments. I really hope Opie had a good contract for all this. And to the friend I hope, knowing that the kid is hers, conceived naturally and still receiving payment for being a surrogate, makes this snake the worst. Not the a-hole. If you do not want to be a mother to this child, I understand why. I would caution you in giving up your parental rights because that could be used against you in the court of public opinion. I would talk to a lawyer about a breach of contract since she was supposed to carry a baby that was genetically yours, then look into having your name removed from the birth certificate. The child was conceived through cheating, and you were made to believe this child was conceived through IVF. There could be an argument there to have you removed from the birth certificate. Doing this makes it perfectly clear you were never the mother of this child, as opposed to a bitter woman who gave up her parental rights out of spite when she got the news that the baby she always wanted did not meet her exacting standards. And believe me, this will be the way your ex and the ex-friend will paint it. Also, doing it this way forced the ex-friend to face the repercussions of what she did. Best of luck to you. Thank you. That is sage advice. I will definitely heed this when I talk to a lawyer soon. I'm still going through consultations and figuring out what my best course of action would be lawyer-wise. Next story. After trying for a baby without success, my boyfriend confessed he got a vasectomy done years ago and didn't want to tell me so I wouldn't break up with him over it. Am I the a-hole for not taking the news very well? Saying I'm heartbroken and angry is an understatement. For context, I, 29 female, and my now ex-boyfriend, 34 male, have been dating for a bit over 7 years. We met through a dating app and we had an instant connection. Early on in the relationship, I wasn't seriously thinking about marriage and kids, but we discussed it, and while I don't care for marriage, I've always been sure I'd like to have 1 or 2 kids, and he was on board with having kids eventually. I stress this because from our very first date, I told him I wanted to have a family. It's very important to me, and if he had told me he didn't want kids back then, I wouldn't have progressed the relationship. A few years ago, we were both doing great. I work from home and make decent money, and so does he. We had just bought our first home together, so I suggested we could start trying for kids within the next few years. He was up for it and seemed as enthusiastic as I was. But then, although we were actively trying for a baby, I wasn't getting pregnant. I started having severe anxiety over it. I thought there was something wrong with me. I started taking vitamins, eating healthier, exercising more. But I couldn't get pregnant. Not being able to get pregnant severely affected my self-esteem. Why can some people get pregnant despite using birth control perfectly, and I couldn't get pregnant even while tracking my periods and doing everything right? I felt like crap. My boyfriend tried to brush it off, saying that it was okay, or that maybe we're just not meant to be parents, and then would stress how great our relationship was, how maybe me not getting pregnant was a sign, and that even if we didn't have kids, we could be a dank couple and enjoy life. Now, while there's nothing wrong with being child-free, that's not the life I personally want. If I can't have kids biologically, I'm perfectly fine adopting or fostering. But in my future, I've always envisioned having a family with kids. And that's what I've worked my butt off for all those years. Anyway, to cut it short, after a year and a half of trying with no success, I decided to visit a fertility clinic and get a few tests done to check my fertility. To my surprise, my tests came out completely fine. Then the fertility clinic suggested to bring in my partner to check the quality of his sperm. When I got home and told him about it, he got visibly nervous and tried to make excuses not to go, saying he was busy, that he's scared of doctors, or that we should just keep trying for a few more years. I got very suspicious because he's normally a bit of an hypochondriac and is certainly not scared of doctors. After I asked about his weird behavior, and I pressed for answers, yes, I know it's wrong, he blurted out that he had a vasectomy done 4 years ago. I was baffled, and I still don't get it. Before seriously considering kids, we often talked about the future and our hypothetical family. Heck, we had been actively trying for a baby for over a year. He then told me that he decided against having kids some time ago, but that he never told me because he said that if he told me, I'd probably would have broken up with him, which he didn't want. When I asked him why he didn't tell me while we were trying for kids, knowing how depressed I became over my fertility issues, he said that he hoped that when I saw I wasn't getting pregnant, I would perhaps abandon the idea and that we could just keep the relationship as it was. We had a huge fight. I was very angry. I felt lied to, strung along. And although I know I'm still pretty young, I was hoping to be a mother before I turned 30, and now all of those plans have gone down the drain. I told him how now I'd have to start over with someone else because he wasted my time. At this point, we were both crying and yelling. He begged me to stay and offered to reverse his vasectomy and try for a baby for real, but I broke up with him on the spot and packed my things. I still love him and I want this more than anything, but I don't think I'll ever be able to forgive him for lying to me for years, over something he knows is so important to me. It's been roughly a week since our fight. I moved out of the house and now I'm living with a friend temporarily until I figure out the legal house stuff. I had to get a burner phone because mine has been blowing up with calls and texts from him and his family, asking me to please give him another chance, and saying that everyone makes mistakes. How he was scared of telling me how since now he's open to kids, we should get back together and consider counseling, etc. I don't think I can do it. What kind of relationship would we even have if we got back together? I don't want to constantly wonder what else is he lying to me about, but everyone is making me feel like I'm the bad guy for not forgiving him when he came clean to me. So am I the a-hole? You can't ever take him back. He not only intentionally defrauded you, he let it go on for 4 years while watching your mental and emotional health be destroyed by not being able to conceive. And there is no way in hell he means it about wanting kids now. He just wants her to stay. If they do have kids, he won't be an active/good parent and will potentially resent having kids. It will all be an OP. Hopefully she stands firm and gets the house issue resolved quickly so she can cut ties for good. He would have secretly had it reversed if he really meant it, rather than trying to convince Opie it wasn't meant to be. How is him choosing to get a vasectomy and hiding it from you a mistake? That was a choice. A mistake is him getting you red roses when you like yellow. Getting a vasectomy and then letting you think you're infertile was a choice he continuously made. He is now experiencing the consequences of his choice, and unfortunately he dragged you down with him. Go find someone you can trust and won't make major life changes without talking to you about it. Ignite anyone telling you differently, not the a-hole. His subtext: it's a mistake that I got caught on this massive lie/fraud/betrayal. Yep, His mistake was that he got found out and didn't have a backup plan to keep hiding it from you. A mistake doesn't last 4 years. Last story. Am I the a-hole for being hurtful towards my children after I found out they had been contacting my affair child? I have a daughter who is the result of an affair. I'm aware that makes me an a-hole, and I truly had no excuse. My wife is a saint who agreed to give me a second chance, but was very clear she did not want my daughter in her house. I agreed, though I did want to be in my daughter's life. Due to some unfortunate circumstances, my daughter Daisy came to live with us when she was 15. I made sure all of the labor fell on me, as not inconvenience my wife. Understandably, my other children did not want a relationship with Daisy, and I never pushed it. Daisy married into a lot of money. I'm talking about a man who thinks it's normal to use helicopters like cars, and going to her house is like something out of Downtown Abbey. My children met Daisy's husband once, and I thought that was it. But I recently got a text from Daisy saying, "Can you tell your legitimate kids to stop talking to me? Please and thank you." I was confused, and she sent me screenshots of them apologizing for not knowing her better and claiming they loved her. Daisy accompanied these texts with cash emojis. I confronted my kids and told them they had embarrassed me and should be embarrassed about themselves. I said they wouldn't have sent those messages if she married a local mechanic and to leave her alone. My kids were very hurt, and my wife exploded and said, "How dare I call our kids embarrassments when they were being kind to their sister." Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. I'm Team Daisy. Your legitimate kids and wife probably put her through hell while she was living with you. Good for her for declining any association with them now. Honestly, the second time Opie was the a-hole was letting Daisy be mistreated to begin with. Some freaking saint his wife is. I've known hateful mother effers who the devil would be scared to take, who've treated their spouse's affair child far better. Am I the only person confused as to how the family thought appropriate to have Daisy move in, and the mom intentionally doesn't care for her and the siblings intentionally ignore her and don't build a relationship? Like the damage done to poor Daisy's thoughts and family? Shaking my head. It wasn't perfect, but she showed up bleeding, crying, and threatening self-harm if I didn't let her in. I cannot leave her like that. You were 100% right to take her in. Where you failed was encouraging the other adult in the house to treat her less than the other children. If your wife wasn't willing to care for her, then you two should have split up so Daisy could have a home she was loved in. Your arrangement made your wife a bit more comfortable at the expense of a literal child. It's absolutely no wonder your legitimate children felt no qualms about trying to get money out of Daisy. You and their mom taught them well that Daisy wasn't really worthy of the same level of respect.